Hello everyone, I'm Jonathan, also known as the Medieval Genie, and today we're going to be talking about this, which is the Battleaxe. Now, when they say Battleaxe, it seems to be a term that can refer to an axe in one hand, or an axe in two hands, used for fighting, or battle, hence Battleaxe. So I will talk about both, but I will more specifically focus on one hand, because I try not to extrapolate too far and talk about what I know, such as from things like sparring experience and test cutting and those things. So yeah, I'll carry on with that. And this is a viewer request, so wish granted, and when I'm done with this video, if you leave comments about the things that you want me to talk about, this is the whole point of the whole Medieval Genie. I grant the wishes, I do the videos, and do my best to help you out. So anyway, lots of people have been talking about a video which came out recently, which was by a guy called Matthew Patrick. He did a video on the Game Theory channel, which is based on Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and talking about various things. And loads of people have done response videos, so I'm not going to make another one because it's pointless, since loads of others, like Scalagram channel, have already done so, and it feels redundant to repeat those same counterpoints to him over again. Plus, I haven't watched his video. One, because I'm fed up of the Assassin's Creed franchise. I've gone off it years ago. And two, I'd long also since gone off his channel. So, twofold, I'm not going to watch it anyway, so I'd be responding to something I've not even watched, which is a bit rude. So, yes, talking broadly about the Battleaxe, one of the things we should do is look at it as a weapon. Now, I don't mean the obvious stuff like, oh, it's an axe, it used to chop wood, now it chops people, aren't I clever? I mean the less obvious things. So, of course, you look at an axe and you can consider that its weight gives it a driving force to make it hit something. So if I take an object like a stick, here's a stick, I've been collecting clubs and things ever since I was little. So here we are, I take a stick, I hit someone even as hard as I can, it's not going to have as much impact as something like this stick. So I've probably watched too many zombie films and video games and things making improvised and homemade weapons. Put this lump of iron I found on the end of it and turned it into a sort of mace. Now, as you can imagine, the extra impact means this could do a hell of a lot more injury. I could whack someone very hard with this stick that hasn't got any iron shod on it, and it doesn't have the same impact, and I could potentially not even cause broken bones or other serious injuries, maybe a couple of bruises here and there, whereas this, a different story. So there is that. But another factor that also has an impact, pardon the pun there by accident, is actually the weight distribution, and this is something that's very often overlooked. So if we look at a more feasible weapon, not sticks and clubs, here is a Battleaxe that I forged. So this is a one-handed sword of the same sort of era. I mean, I thought in fitting with that whole responding to Matt Pat's video and all that, I would focus more on Saxons, Vikings, and early medieval period. So here's a Battleaxe, an early medieval design of a sword in one hand. So this has a general sort of, it does have a bit of a forward weight. However, you'll see it is still fairly backwards balanced compared to something like a hatchet or an axe, or a Battleaxe. So it does mean that I can cut from various angles, so even if I'm not swinging as efficiently, and I perhaps catch somewhere around here, or if I do it a lot more efficiently, I catch around here, the even overall balance, apologies for the dog, means that I can still make for a very efficient cut. Now, the lack of the forward weight means that this sword will never achieve the full potential that an axe can. When I swing this sword, even if I have it quite a forward weighted sword, maybe it's a bit thicker or broader towards the tip, even if I swing it very hard and I've got very good edge alignment, so I'm not flat slapping, I'm doing a perfect cut that should do very nicely. Its slicing action is fantastic because of its sharp edge and the design of the sword. But in terms of the actual impact, the amount of chopping power it has is never going to be the same as a Battleaxe, specifically because of its design. Now don't get me wrong, I'm going to go over it later on, that I actually prefer the sword to the axe for a few different reasons. But in terms of the raw, if we treat this like a video game and, you know, this weapon does this much damage and this weapon does this much damage. If I use the sweet spot, which is around here, on the sword, I've got the same strength in my arms and the rest of my body, I'm doing the same kind of degree of cut, you know, I'm causing an injury in the same location, wham! I'm doing less with this sword than I could do with this battle axe, even though it should potentially be quite devastating because of the length of the sword, and bearing in mind the longer the lever, it's a physics thing, I'm not an expert but I'll try to summarise it, the longer it is, the more sort of leverage you have in a cut. So something knife length, I can swing more than what I'm doing with a hammer fist to punch or something, and I'm causing more impact back here. So of course this area causes less damage than this area, but despite that fact, the actual weight distribution is so even so that the sword can cut well all the way along its length. That makes it, in a sense, superior and inferior to the battle axe. So in various areas this is more forgiving, which almost seems ironic that it's a more expensive, more of a warrior's weapon. It seems less improvised and more like a professional's item. But this sword is more forgiving for beginners when we're talking about distance. So if I swing and I cut around here, I can do quite a lot of injury, as you can imagine. You don't want to get hit with the sharp bit of a sword, I need hardly mention. So even if I'm not using the sweet spot to do the absolute maximum potential, there are many areas all the way along where I can do quite a lot of injury. It's quite dangerous. Now if we take something like this hatchet, which of course will still act in the same way as a proper fighting axe or battle axe, I can't do that anymore. There is the fact that if I hit here, there are two problems. One, there's no sharp edge, so there's a lot of area where I'm not able to do actual injury with, suffice it to say, which might seem like an obvious thing to say, but it means you have to be in control of your distance a lot more. Everyone knows that if you're too far away from something, you swing and you hit the air instead of the person, but what might not be so considered is that if you don't get the distance right, instead of swinging and missing, you're swinging and just slapping with a bit of wood, which actually might do even less damage than a stick, because the weight is forcing itself over here in an area of, you know, the iron head that's not even touching the person, so it's almost taking the force away from where it's hitting, worse than a stick. But it also is quite good because despite this lack of cutting area, in the area where it does cut, it does it really well. Very bloody well. When I hit with this area, like I said, there's only so much I can do even with the sweet spot of a sword. So for my strength, for the leverage I've got in the reach, for the weight I've got in the sword, I swing as hard as I can and I'm doing what I think is a perfect hit. And it can do a lot of injury. It's a sword still. You know, it's still a very deadly weapon. But there's still a limit. I can only do so much cutting damage, to use a video game term. There's so much damage that I can do with a sword. When I use an axe, on the other hand, there's so much weight and it's all focused. You can see if I do the point of balance, it's practically in the head. Look at that, I've got it next to the head and that's still trying to fall off my hands forward on the short part. There's so much of the weight, not just how heavy it is, but the percentage, the degree of the weapon's overall weight that is just here in the head, means that if I do the same strength and the same weight and everything converts to the same potential swing, the sheer injury that I can cause with this is significantly more. It's not just a little bit better, it's significantly more. So it is a whole new situation. So if I was up against someone with some sort of light armour, bearing in mind in the time period we're talking about, sort of Saxon Viking times, a decent warrior would have nice helmet with some sort of aventail or something. They would also have chainmail, or also known as mail, decent sturdy stuff. Now I'm not going to tell you that this is some sort of magic weapon. It's still a piece of iron trying to hit another piece of iron. There's so much that it can do, but I wouldn't say chances because that sounds too much like a random numbers video game type of thing, but the opportunity for you to do injuries behind or through the armour is much better with an axe. If I cut with my sword, it's mostly a slicing experience, so if I'm using this in a fight, one of the reasons why I find myself in my own personal style to be a hand carver, as in someone who targets areas that expose themselves like the hands and the forearms, is not only for tactical reasons in terms of what I can hit without being hit in the process, it's also in terms of things like armour. So if you've got a person in that sort of time period, let's say he's a decent warrior, so he's wearing decent, decent burny, mail, chainmail sort of shirt on. So if I try to slice through those steel rings, it's just going to go and slide. It's not actually going to do anything, especially since real armour, it would be made from riveted rings. So unlike some versions you might have seen on other videos where you just open up easily the buttered rings that falls apart quite easily, it's very difficult to go through armour like that. You need to pierce with something like a spear, shoot them with a bow, or take a really walloping weapon and try to bruise or break bones behind the armour. It's very difficult. So with my sword, I try to cut the torso, I go, ah, slice, that should disembowel someone. It does nothing except making them go, oof. And then I go, okay, I'll hit the head. Now this should be a skull-splitting action. I whack them, and it might cause a dent. They might get a dent, they might get a... I've seen it on, actual armour and things. If you get a helmet, what you might see is a little bit of a sort of crinkle trying to come in, where the wedge of the sword is going in, and you also see a kind of a deep scratch, which is where you've not just had the impact, so there's the dent caused by the wedge-shaped impact, and then there's the scratch caused by, of course, the slicing edge doing something, but not enough to go completely through the helmet and kill someone behind it. So then I've got fewer options. I need to look at maybe cutting the neck between the helmet and the chainmail. I might look at something like hand carving, my favourite, because usually people weren't wearing, maybe at best, maybe some sort of gloves or something, we're not sure, but perhaps maybe only having their bare hands. So all of these things are possible, even if you've got a lot of problems having to get around a helmet, mail armour, their shield, all sorts of problems, and their friends fighting around them if it's a battle. But there are some areas in which can be targeted to then cause injury. This stops being as much of a problem when you take something like a battle axe. Now, I don't imagine this sort of thing would often cut through armour still, but if I was to hit somebody's head with a weighted axe, there's a problem in that, you're getting quite an impact. Even if it's not a mace, which is the king of all impact weapons, or a warhammer from later medieval periods, or Renaissance period, hitting someone with an axe still has a noticeable degree of that same effect. So I'm hitting them, and I'm going to cause a significant concussion through the helmet, even if the helmet itself remains completely undamaged. Or I might be able to cause some kind of fracture in the skull if I'm hitting really hard and I've got a weight enough axe and all those sorts of factors. So that can potentially happen much more likely than using a sword. And same with hitting their chainmail armour. I don't think it would cut all the way through and make the armour fall to pieces, but you can still cause not just a bit of bruising, but also broken bones and injuries that can hamper or incapacitate your opponent through the armour. The armour is still a fantastic thing because, you're taking something like a broken rib or a nasty concussion for a good while, as opposed to dying. But at the same time, as the attacker, probably in a war, I want to survive, I want to look like I'm a decent warrior, so I want to incapacitate the opponent, I want to not die in the process, I want to scare people with an impressive display. So if I injure someone, even if that's not some kind of video game level, oh yes, you killed someone, if you're injuring someone still behind their armour, or in areas that are not wearing armour, you're still doing well as a warrior. It's good enough. You don't have to make limbs fly everywhere and make blood gush. You just need to hurt people while not getting hurt yourself. And then if you're doing that with enough skill, you can be doing quite well as a warrior, get paid more, get more loot, all of those things. You're scaring people, you're injuring people, you're attacking better, you're defending better. It's good, still. So having something like an axe can help a lot to do that. And I mentioned, of course, about damaging people through armour, but one of the things that is noteworthy when we look at things like duelling in the Saxon Viking eras, it's interesting that often it's mentioned that multiple shields are given to the warriors. So that suggests whether they're using things like hatchets or swords, when you're fighting, there's going to be damage to the shield. And the types of shields used were quite lightweight. They were very large and broad. This is more like a Scottish targe. The sort of Saxon Viking style shields would have been bigger, but not too much heavier. So they kind of sacrifice their durability for that, which means that when people are striking and they're being parried by shields, damage is being done all over the place. And of course, as you can imagine, axes love chopping wood. So even an axe that's not really designed for trees anymore, but is designed for people, you've still got a lot of those axe capabilities, which are damaging shields more than a sword. If I was wielding something like this sharp sword, if I struck at the very edge of a shield that doesn't have any kind of rim made of iron or rawhide or something, I can potentially get stuck in the shield, which is a problem. I don't want to be stuck in the middle of a fight. But also, it's kind of doing a split, and it's less of a chopping action. Whereas if I'm taking something that looks more like it's designed for chopping wood, and I'm hacking at someone's shield, I imagine I'm going to be breaking through those shields, and therefore opening up the opponent's defence a lot sooner. So this is again another advantage of the battle axe over the sword. Now, if I not so much digress, but take a new perspective for a minute, as my real self, I actually prefer swords to axes, I've mentioned. So the reasons why are, I'd mentioned that you've got a more forgiving edge, so it means I can exploit distance and timing more. So rather than having to use a very narrow, focused area, which I must strike with, I've got areas where I can strike, I could strike right at the very tip, I can strike close to the handle, so I could, for example, go on someone's neck from close up. This is sharp, by the way, I don't know why I'm doing this, but I can go close up like that and then slice along. I don't need room for a full-on swing, so this is a good thing about the sword. Apart from that, sword stab, so this is quite useful. And even though, obviously, axes lend themselves naturally to hooking, you still need to be in the right circumstances for it. So with something like an axe, it's quite useful that you can do hooking at range. So this is another advantage of the hatchet over the sword, especially bearded axes, which have even more of a hooking shape to them. So if I'm taking someone, let's say there's someone's spear, I'm just barely parrying it, I can try to take their spear out of the way with my shield, but it's round, maybe they're going underneath it a bit, maybe we're going to go over it, they're just thrusting and then come back out. If I can try to catch around them using my hatchet, I can trap them a little bit more, because rather than being around here, when I can go around the shield, there's still a degree of entrapment and holding, especially if I close in, so they thrust past my shield, and then I'm charging and closing a distance past that, so then they're ending up too close. It's not as likely to happen as if I hook their spear, so instead of having this area in which to freely move, they're now stuck with this area, and now instead of being able to go around, they can't go this way, they can't go that way, they can't go left, they cannot go right, they cannot go left, they cannot go up, they can just about go down, unless I'm following them down, and maybe trapping their spear. If they lower it enough, I can basically just stand my foot on it, or just completely take it and go in and close distance. So if I've done a hook or an entrapment successfully with the axe on something like a spear, another axe, or a sword, this hooking is significantly better with the axe. But you can also use the handle of a hatchet to do some hooking. In the same way, you can also use a pommel or a crossguard of a sword. I've done videos talking about that sort of stuff already, especially in binds. And you can also do some entrapment, binding and riposting with the blade of the sword, and sort of let the edge, or the edge of your sword bite in. You can do a degree of that with the edge of a hatchet as well. But the entrapment that you do with an axe is a lot more so, which can be good, However, you need to be careful when doing that with a hatchet, because if, let's say, two axes locked together, yes, you can be perhaps pulling your opponent towards you, or perhaps you're trapping a spear and you want to take the opponent closer towards you. But let's say in the axe example, I've hooked them, I think, aha, I'm so clever, but then instead of me being able to pull them closer to me, they're stronger or perhaps better position, maybe I've overextended myself, and they can pull me off balance instead. So that hooking isn't necessarily an instant win. If I hook my opponent, maybe actually they gain the advantage if I've hooked their weapon. Another example of a hooking action where it doesn't go right could be, let's say someone thrusts at me, I trap them using my hatchet, so I'm wanting to go close, and I'm thinking, I can close in, their spear won't be useful, release, and then hack at them with the axe. So I'm doing all this focus on the hooking with my hatchet, and then in the meantime the person drops their spear, takes a knife and stabs into me. Yes, I'm closing in, so their spear's useless, but a lot of people in those sorts of times tended to have little knives or daggers like the sacks on them, so then I'm closing in, I think, oh, I'm so clever, I'm going to close in, take my axe away and then fight, and then while I'm closing a distance, thank you very much, that's a win to the enemy instead. It's that thing where you need to bear in mind that using an axe to hook, like I said, it's not an instant win. You need to know when and how. Another example of, this time not hooking a weapon but hooking a shield, a far simpler example is if I'm using my axe and I'm trying to hit, let's say, around the head, and I'm not able to get around, and I think, I know, I'm hooking the shield, I'll pull the shield down to expose them. But the problem is, the entire time that I've got my axe, my one weapon, hooked around someone's shield, even if I'm pulling it down, so all of this is happening. We've gone from a very well-defended opponent, perhaps they're extending their shield, perhaps it's close to their body, whatever's happening, and then an axe gets hooked around, and hello, it's like opening a tin can. You've suddenly gone from everything's covered to everything's exposed. The problem is, the entire time that's happening, the axe is bound. This is not necessarily a good thing. So while I'm binding with my axe, yes, I'm taking their defense away, but the problem is I'm also taking my attack away. So if I see someone, let's say someone is fighting me, we both have axes, or maybe I have a sword, it doesn't matter, I don't care, maybe I have a spear, maybe I have just a knife. I'm fighting, the other person's got an axe, and then they catch onto my shield, uh-oh, and then they're pulling my axe down, I don't care. While all this time, they're pulling my shield away. My shield doesn't bleed, it's a block of wood that I'm using to help me control the fight. I mentioned this in my video about defending with swords. When you are a defender, you don't think of it as you are blocking, you are stopping a sharp thing from doing a bad thing to you. It's a way to control your opponent. So if you tried using the hatchet to hook the shield down or across or in some other fashion like that, it doesn't necessarily, again, mean an instant win for you, because the entire time someone hooks my shield and pulls it down, yes, I'm thinking in a little side bit, yes, my shield is being pulled away, so now I'm losing my defense. But the real juicy bit that is making me moisten in a little, tasty time, I'm seeing that their hatchet is there. It's not swinging at me, it's not doing anything else, because by the time they pull back and are going to swing at me, well, you know, either they pull the shield down and then they pull back because they want to hit me, so my shield's pulled down, they let go, okay, my shield's back again. Nothing happened. They've pulled my shield down, and if they pull back, they don't find a way to perhaps draw down and then immediately, do some sort of attack, perhaps with the shield or with the axe from where their axe already is. If they're trying to pull the shield and then come back for a strike, if their axe is still bound with my shield, then I know precisely where their weapon is, and also that for the moment it's not really as much of a danger. Even if they are, let's say they hook my shield down and then cut upwards, it's less force because they're already forwards to some degree, hooking my shield, and are then driving their body forwards to cut up at me somewhere, whereas I, in the meantime, while my shield is being pulled down, I have plenty of opportunity to wind up for a swing. So either, this is the thing, they've hooked onto my shield, and maybe I don't do as much preparation for a swing. It's just a nice, quick, snappy hit. The kind of thing you see a lot in historical European martial arts, people just sort of doing direct line from point A to point B. This is where my axe is, this is where the target is, da! So that's option one. They're pulling my shield down. While they're pulling my shield down, da! I hit them. Or it's going to be a two-time thing, so while they're pulling my shield down, I'm bracing, ready to swing quite hard. They might have enough opportunity to go a weaker cut, and in the meantime, of course, we've had this. I hit them very hard. So if we're trading injuries in that instance, what people might expect is, well, this clever man hooked the shield and then he hit the guy, so he's the better warrior. Whereas what really happens is, he's hooked the shield, we both hit each other. In that sense, I'm the better warrior as the defender, because I've had the chance to prepare and swing very hard at some very exposed areas as much as I like. And at the same time, they've had less of an opportunity. The only thing that stands in the way is, of course, where you need to add this tactical layer, which is the shield. Now that's why I haven't mentioned it up to now. I'm not being stupid, I'm deliberately omitting it until this point to say how you can stop that from being a problem. So, we go back to that example. So I hook on, so now I'm the attacker. Not to say I'm brilliant, I'm just to demonstrate. So anyway, the attacker hooks around the opponent's shield. They draw the shield down. Now, in the meantime, you should have the shield ready. So this is if, in that sort of battlefield context. So you have your shield or your second weapon ready, and then that means that if the opponent is immediately swinging at you while you draw the shield down, it doesn't matter, they've been blocked by my shield. If it's something more where they're bracing and they're then going to swing, I can still keep it there until they try something. So their shield's been hooked by my axe. I'm keeping my defense ready as much as I can. Ideally, what I'd want to do is drive the shield into them. This is getting less into axe tactics or into shield tactics, but they go hand in hand, if you pardon the pun about each item in each hand. But you're using the axe, you're then using a shield. I drive in. Ideally, either I'm driving into perhaps the opponent's face, so then if they're trying to swing, they're kind of blocked by my shield, so I'm blocking their arms of it while I'm doing that hooking, and then perhaps I can freely look at that quick attack from drawing their shield down. Or I'm hooking down with the axe, and then I'm pushing their shield arm out of the way. Of course, this can potentially be dangerous, because if I'm pushing down, or pushing across with my shield onto their shield, I have disabled their shield, but I'm also engaging my own. You can try to angle this so that in the meantime you cover yourself more. Like, for example, perhaps I hook the shield from underneath and I push upwards, so then it's driving into them and I might be able to have some low targets while I'm keeping myself all covered and their shield's all up in the air, and everything up high is basically blocked, so their high weapon is blocked, their high shield is blocked, my high shield is all blocked, and it's all tangled, but I've got a free weapon, cut, or do what I like. Those are the sorts of things you can do if you're using an axe with a shield, or if you're using an axe against a shield. If you don't have a shield, of course, you need to be aware of the fact that you can't defend, that you can't just block things as well, but you still have plenty of options. So let's say I'm a very unlucky bastard and I've got just a hatchet. The guy's got a weapon and a shield. Excuse me, I want to take the shield out of the way because every time I try a little swing, they're just blocking it with the shield very well, and I'm worried that they're going to block with a shield while hitting me with their weapon. No thanks. So maybe I try to, I try to hook with their shield, and then I can look at potentially closing in, hooking their shield to engage it, and then bind with them, or grapple I mean. So I'm closing in so far that if an opponent's trying to swing at me, rather than getting a chance to kill me, I'm closing in and I'm grappling with their weapon. Their shield can't smack me or push me away. I grapple in and maybe look at something like trying to do a disarm or otherwise engage their weapon. And if we ended up in this situation, I can either drop my weapon, disarm theirs, or if I wish to be an axeman, since we are in an axe video, then I'm engaging their weapon. They've got their shield, they might try to hit me with it, but it's still not a proper weapon, whereas I've got a free axe to try many things. I can strike high, I can strike low, I can keep hooking their shield and use inside lines, or even strike into the arm of the shield if I get close enough, so that basically I'm cutting in these sorts of areas. There are many options available. So the hooking of an axe, I realise I've I've gone on about this point for a long time to try and give you all an idea of how it could work, but the hooking with an axe, the point I'm making is, hooking using the axe can be both a brilliant thing and also a terrible thing. You need to know how to do it right. That's the key point here. If you do it wrong, you engage your axe and you stop being a threat. If you do it right, you control your opponent and give yourself a lot of options, most of which involve you get the upper hand and win. So, similarly, we should talk about axes in two hands. Now this can help in the fact that you gain the extra reach. Now, I've got a felling axe because that's what I have, but if you're using these sorts of items again, you can do hooking actions, and you can do things like, of course, your standard chopping actions. But also, with this sort of larger axe, I find that it does very much change your style. When you're swinging with an axe, you can kind of treat it in the same way as an arming sword. So it is a swinging weapon, you take your position, you execute, you sort of extend with your arms and sling it across and hit your target. With an axe, you cannot use a two-handed axe like a two-handed sword, whereas you can use a one-handed axe like you use a one-handed sword for the basic swings. If you're using something like a sort of, I mean obviously this is a felling axe, so it takes it to the extreme, it's too heavy, but even if I had a lighter battle axe in two hands, if I start in some kind of ready position and then I swing with it, the problem is it requires a lot of commitment. I talked about this in my most recent video about defending yourself with a sword, about an example where someone actually using a sword, a lighter, quicker weapon, swung very hard and left himself very open, basically, and you time it like a skipping rope. Here it's dangerous, whoosh, past here, now it's safe, do whatever the hell you want. So you don't want to do that with a battle axe. So I don't really have much room for this here, but what I've seen, the best that I've sort of, again, I've not really had a chance to practice this style, but the best I've seen so far, and what I've also seen in the heavier Montantes, Spadoni, those sorts of Zweihander, large, really heavier two-handed swords, these sorts of heavier swinging weapons, and what people have guessed probably happened with these sorts of two-handed axes, is that you would basically start a momentum and you'd keep it going. So this isn't really something that you could use in a formation that's tight up. You'd be loose up, and then you basically, let me take my sword handle out of the way because I do not want to chop something that I spent hours and days making, but you can basically swing and swing. I've caught myself in my jumper, swing and swing. Obviously you've got to be very careful because you don't want to make yourself like a skipping rope. Dangerous, now you can hit me, dangerous, now you can hit me, doing all of this. There is a way you need to try and time it and try and stave your opponent, so you can do these whirling motions, not too overcommitted. So if I took a good long stance and I went really far to commit, I can potentially open myself up in the meantime. I don't want to do that. But if I keep a general flow going, so I'm going around and around and around and around and around, I'm just kind of keeping this movement going. So if someone were foolish enough to try and close into that distance while I'm whirling the axe around, they're getting hit with a very bad weapon that's going to cause them significant injuries. It's not something they want to do, unless they're really dumb, and well, they can die anyway then. But if you're swinging with these sorts of axes, then keeping the momentum going is a good idea, unless you're looking at something like, perhaps you could look at some sort of bind, which might naturally happen while you're whirling it. So let's say someone's got a spear and you're the axeman, you're using the battle axe, they've got a spear, and then while they're looking to thrust at you, of course, I don't want to get stabbed with a spear, So I'm doing this, trying to stave them. They're maybe doing a few jabs here and there for spear to try and stave me, and then I see an opportunity, they thrust a bit, and then I turn this momentum into something to beat or hook onto their spear and perhaps drive it to the ground, stand on their point, and then use it to finish them off. That's one way in which you could fight. Against someone with something like a battle axe, a one-handed battle axe, or with a sword or something else short like that, I'd want to use this battle axe to try and stave them, because my range using this long axe is longer than their range of a sword. Excuse me. If they use their weapon and can get into their range, they're faster, they can still cause serious injury or death. They can also try to close in and grapple with me, and that would be the end of me. Because even with a very hefty chopping weapon like this, it's like I mentioned earlier, the damage happens here. If someone's hit here, that will hurt a lot. If they're hit here, it'll hurt a bit. If they're being caught, if they're catching here, you know what? They've done it on purpose. This is called grappling. So let's say I'm an idiot and I think, well, I'll just split his head in two. Right, and this is my plan. I'm going to go like that and split their head in twain. Whereas what happens is, I go like that. What's happening? What's happening is, someone might realise that with whatever weapon they've got, and they decide, well, the other person's raising like that, ready to chop your head in twain. No, you don't. You close in using your weapon, using your shield, using your bare hands to grapple with the opponent. And even if they are still trying to swing downwards, the fact of the matter is, if you're able to grapple with the opponent, either with their arms or with the haft of the weapon, you can quite easily try to disarm it. You can just look at many styles of unarmed martial arts, not necessarily historical European martial arts and things to do with the medieval period. Just even your oriental things, there's not actually that much difference. You've got abilities to do locks and throws and disarms and takedowns and all these things. If the other person gets too close, they can either use their shorter weapon better than you, or they can grapple with you and steal your weapon away, like a toy being, confiscated from a little brat. You don't want to be the disarmed brat. So hence, you need to keep the person at a distance. You do not want to be in a situation where you're swinging and creating openings, or you're not swinging and you're getting ready for it and you can't really prepare in enough, and therefore before you even have a chance, let's say I'm here, yes, this is threatening and intimidating, this would be something straight out of a horror movie. You see this, hey there, wham, they die. The truth is, there's all this, look, all of that so far is the time in which a grapple could have happened. Time from here, safe, grapple, 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 grapple. Now it's dangerous. There's this massive window, so trying to start from zero doesn't work, which is why I say it's such a different weapon style, and why you'd think that you've got an, like in video games, you'd have an axe skill, so you're good with an axe, you're good with an axe. The truth is, it's more like you're good with all, general one-handed weapons. So a person like me in real life, I mean, I'm not saying I'm a brilliant fighter, I'm barely a mediocre fighter, but even I could pick up a stick in one hand, I know how to fight with it. I could pick up a hatchet, I know how to swing and cut with it. I can pick up a sword, I've loved these and I've used them for years. I pick up a two-handed axe, what the hell is this object? I try to swing, half the world could have grabbed me in that time. What the hell is that? So, hence, it's very alien to people who are new to this sort of style to try and use it as a weapon, because you've got to start this momentum and keep going, and it does require quite a lot of endurance, and you need to try and time it. You don't want to be too kind of non-committal and just, kind of doing a bit of this and nothing that really means anything, and there's no actual threat. But at the same time, you don't want to be swinging really hard and fast and whoa, you swing off and flail into the sunset, because one, you get very tired, two, you create a lot of openings. It's very difficult to use a battle axe in that style, so you need to consider how to use it. One of the things to bear in mind as well is that you use something like a sword or a battle axe, the one-handed version, or a spear. They can be used in a battle or they can be used in things like duels or self-defense. Indeed, things like knives and things are also used in close combat as well. You can use various items. I find personally I would be extremely reluctant to use a battle axe for a duel, or, you know, some kind of self-defense situation. It is quite literally, when it's the two-handed version, a battle axe, very much for battle. If I take this axe, I would find myself at a better advantage if I either am on open field, so I have the room to swing around, and I've got people who I'm staving off. Perhaps there are cavalry approaching, so then I can threaten their horses by swinging the axe, and I'm getting plenty of momentum. I can see them coming, I can time my swings, and I can get it so that I'm either threatening to hit the horse, or, you know, and they actually are scared away, or actually do hit the horse when they try to commit, and hopefully don't get stabbed by a lance in the meantime. And all of this is happening. Or if I'm using the battle axe in a formation, I'd want other people using shorter weapons, or even, when I say shorter weapons, lighter weapons, sorry. So things like a sword, a hatchet, or even something longer like a spear. They're using those things to try and engage with the enemy, and then I can stay behind with the axe, and I can occasionally launch attacks over and from behind, or perhaps around from the sides, and engage an opponent that way. Or perhaps even use it for something like a flanking attack. So if you have a lot of people who are engaging some people, you know, with things like spears and swords, and they're doing what they can, if someone is approaching them from an angle, you know, maybe from the side or from behind, with a big, massive axe, there's quite an intimidation. It can be to the point where you might not necessarily even need to be skilled with an axe. You could take some peasants, some felling axes, and just tell them, wait here in the forest, here are some professionals who can do some proper fighting with, you know, all their spears, swords, and do all that kind of stuff. And the village people can just go, didn't see me coming, BAM! That's some legitimate tactics. But I digress. That's more of a tactical rather than actual how to fight as an individual with a large battle axe. But like I said, there is some hooking, not as much. You've got to keep the momentum going. You need to stave opponents. You really do need to keep them away unless they've got something long like a spear, in which case you're wanting to use that swinging momentum to try and create an opening and try and clear their spear or spears away, and just try to use that specific distance to hit with the axe. It's a very specific and very measured game of measure. You don't want to be too close, you don't want to be too far. If you're too far and outside of the axe range, you could get stabbed with a spear. If you're too close, you could get grappled or stabbed with a sword or a knife or something. So like I said, that's why I'm probably giving it such a negative description, because I'm not very experienced at all at using those types of weapons. So I am kind of struggling to come up with reasonable scenarios in which you can use it against someone who's using the weapons I understand, like an arming sword, Battleaxes or something like that. If I had a weapon on its own, if I was given a choice between a battle axe or something like a Battleaxe, I'm going for this weapon because, I mean, one, I know how to use it, two, it just seems more versatile. It seems like there are far more limited purposes, very good, very shocking ways in which you can use a battle axe, which could turn the tide of a battle or a self-defense type of situation where you completely terrify your opponents with an awe-inspiring display of gore and carnage. But as an overall safe way to fight, I'd rather have something like a sword, or even switching back to axes, something like this kind of one-handed battle axe, where I can still have an arm free, I can still use the item swiftly, I can use the axe features like the shield splitting and hooking things and doing all of that far easier with the one-handed version. Or, something I had considered, if you have something along the lines of a two-handed version, this is extrapolating beyond what I've seen historically and more into what I might personally do. There is the opportunity where perhaps, rather than having a heftier, of course this is very extreme because it's a £4 felling axe, so this takes it, you know, it goes to the furthest extremes of, you know, using a walloping weapon that's very slow, other than using something unbearably bad like a sledgehammer. You could take it closer to the opposite extreme, where you have something with perhaps a hatchet style head, something much quicker, something much swifter, but you are instead having it on a long head. Now, if you want to learn more about that, I'd recommend you stop listening to me and you look at people who specialise in medieval poleaxe. Now, those items usually have hammers, they have spikes, and a few times they'll have hatchet heads, and of course they are later weapons. But I feel that the style of using it as that sort of polearm that swings rather than just thrusts, and the ways in which you can hook with it, the ways in which you can use the actual pole to grapple people, and the ways in which, of course, you can use the distance and choking up to cut with the axe, actually is very useful and could apply to something like a two-handed battle axe, but only if it's lightweight enough that you can use it swiftly. That's the key difference here. It's a matter of whether you've got a lightweight battle axe in two hands that is swift and gives you many options, or if you're using a heavier item that is more probably for battle and has an intimidating, catastrophic effect. So that's that about hatchets. In fact, the sun's already setting because it's only 3 in the afternoon, it's British winter, and it's been raining this whole video. And that'll be enough. I shall see you later. If you've stuck around until the end of this video, comment the number 57 and you might win a cookie or something. Probably not though. See you later.